They used to call me the broke one. Not once or twice. It was a running joke in my family for years. At every gathering, someone would bring it up. My dad would shake his head and say, "Alina's heart is big, but her wallet's always empty." My brother Noah made a game out of it, calling me Venmo Queen, because I was always covering things late or splitting bills down to the cent. My mom would smile gently, but even she would say things like, "You need to be more like your brother. He always knows where his money is." They said it all half laughing, like it was harmless, but I heard every word. It stuck to me like a label I couldn't peel off. I'm Alina. I'm 31 now, and for most of my adult life, my family never believed I could handle money. I didn't take the traditional route. I freelanced, jumped between gigs, lived leaner than most. I wasn't flashy. I didn't talk about money or show off my wins because I was always trying to catch up, always feeling one step behind. I built a business quietly while they were busy laughing. I took financial hits, lived with uncertainty, and taught myself how to stretch every dollar. But they never saw that. They only saw the version of me that once asked to borrow gas money at 23, and they never let me forget it. My dad, Frank, is a classic tough love type of man. He worked with his hands his whole life, built everything he had from scratch, and believed anything outside of a steady paycheck and a 401k was irresponsible. My mom, Denise, has always meant well, but she kept the peace by staying quiet, even when the jokes cut deep. Then there's Noah, my older brother. Corporate job, expensive suits, custom watch, and endless passive-aggressive digs about how I'd figure it out someday. And then there's Harper, my younger sister. She's always had my back. Even when we were kids, she'd get angry when someone teased me and step in without thinking twice. She's the only one who never laughed when I talked about building something for myself. The last time we were all together, I remember sitting in the backyard, the grill smoking behind us, paper plates balanced on our laps. Noah was talking about closing on his second investment property, and someone asked me how my little side hustle was going. I smiled and said it was going well, but before I could explain, Noah cut in with a grin and said, "Well, if it ever flops, you've always got a spot on my couch." Everyone laughed. My dad added, "Let's just hope she doesn't try to invest in anything. Last time she balanced a checkbook, she cried." I laughed too, not because it was funny, but because it was safer to pretend it didn't bother me. But what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had spent the last 3 years doing the one thing they thought I never could. I built a financial consulting business from the ground up. I took online courses, landed clients one by one, reinvested every cent, and stayed up too many nights reading contracts and crunching spreadsheets. And a few weeks before that, BBQ, I signed closing documents on a house, not for me, but for them. So when they kept laughing, still calling me the broke one, I just smiled. I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. I just waited, because soon I would hand them a set of keys and one legal condition that would leave them speechless. And for the first time in my life, they wouldn't know what to say. The morning of that family dinner, I woke up before my alarm, my mind already racing. The sunlight poured through my thin curtains, highlighting the stack of notebooks and folders spread across my desk. I had been working late the night before, finalizing paperwork, double-checking legal details, and running through my plan for what felt like the 100th time. My heart was pounding even as I stood there brushing my teeth, but beneath the nerves, there was a deep, humming excitement that I hadn't felt in years. I pulled on a simple blue dress, nothing fancy, just something I felt strong in, and tied my hair back. I glanced at myself in the mirror for a moment longer than usual. My reflection looked calm, but I could see it in my own eyes, the quiet fire, the defiance that had grown stronger every time they called me broke or laughed at my side hustle. For years, I swallowed their jokes, nodded politely, and forced smiles while they congratulated Noah for every tiny win. But today was different. Today, I was done shrinking to make them comfortable. As I packed up a homemade dessert to bring, a habit drilled into me by my mom, who taught us never to arrive empty-handed. I thought about all the moments that led me here. The day I sat on my bedroom floor sobbing because a client ghosted me on an invoice I desperately needed. The night I ate instant noodles again because every dollar had to go toward my savings. The mornings I felt like giving up, but instead dragged myself to my laptop to pitch to new clients. Every one of those sacrifices felt alive inside me that morning, each one echoing with the question, was it all worth it? I got into my car and started driving to my parents' house, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than usual. The roads were quiet, the Sunday air already heating up as I passed familiar landmarks. The grocery store where I once overdrafted my account buying groceries for them when Mom was sick. The gas station where Noah spotted me filling up my car with quarters once and never let me forget it. I used to feel small passing these places, reminders of every failure and every insult. Today, they felt like milestones on a journey only I had really understood. When I pulled up to the house, I saw Dad in the front yard, fussing with the hose, making sure the grass looked perfect before guests arrived. He looked up when he saw me and gave a half wave, then went right back to coiling the hose, as if he had already decided I wouldn't have anything interesting to say. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car, balancing the dessert dish carefully. Inside, Mom was bustling around the kitchen, moving between the oven and the counter like a dancer in a routine she knew by heart. She looked up when I walked in, her face lighting up in that soft, motherly way that always made me pause. "Hi, honey," she said, wiping her hands on a dish towel before giving me a quick hug. "You look nice today. You brought dessert? That's so sweet of you." Her words were kind, but I could hear the layer of polite worry underneath, the same tone she used whenever she tiptoed around me to keep the peace. Noah was already on the patio, feet kicked up on a spare chair, sunglasses on, and beer in hand even though it was barely noon. He gave me a lazy grin, that same smirk that used to drain every bit of my confidence. "Hey, Miss Side Hustle, you bring the vegan dessert again?" he called out. I smiled tightly, choosing not to take the bait. Harper appeared next, almost running into me in her excitement. "There you are," she said, throwing her arms around my shoulders and squeezing tight. Her eyes shone, bright and curious, always searching for my secret plans, even when I tried to hide them. "Did you bring it?" she whispered into my ear, her voice so low only I could hear. I gave her a small nod, and she pulled back with a conspiratorial grin, her excitement bubbling right below the surface. I set the dessert down and moved through the house, soaking it all in. The clatter of dishes, the muffled music from Dad's old stereo, the chatter floating in from the yard. I felt like I was standing behind a glass wall, seeing them all exactly as they had always been. So sure of themselves, so certain of who I was. But they didn't know the real me, the one who had spent years studying balance sheets, learning to stretch and grow every dollar, turning what they thought was play money into real power. As I stood by the kitchen window, watching the breeze rustle the trees in the backyard, I felt my pulse quicken. They still thought they knew me, the broke one, the girl who could barely handle her own rent. But today, they were going to learn who I really was, and this time, there would be no jokes left to hide behind. The afternoon unfolded like every other family gathering. The smell of barbecue smoke curling into the sky, the clink of ice in glasses, the lazy shuffle of old rock songs playing from Dad's weathered backyard speakers. I stood off to the side at first, watching everyone slip into their well-rehearsed roles. Mom moved around refilling plates and checking the grill, her voice soft and patient as she urged people to eat more. Dad hovered at the barbecue, tongs in hand, acting like the king of his small domain. Noah, of course, held court at the patio table, his voice loud enough to carry across the whole yard. Harper flitted around, always close enough to me that I could feel her support, her bright energy keeping me steady. I set a plate of my dessert on the table, and immediately, Noah pointed at it and smirked. "Oh look, Alina's gourmet experiment. How many coupons did you have to clip to buy those ingredients?" He burst into laughter, elbowing Dad like he'd just delivered the best line of the day. Dad chuckled, shaking his head as he flipped a burger. She means well, but you know Alina. Math never was her strong suit. He said it so casually, like he was commenting on the weather, but the words landed with a weight that settled deep in my chest. I felt my face flush hot, but I forced a small, polite smile and took a sip of water to steady my hands. I had learned over the years that fighting back never worked. Any time I defended myself, it turned into another joke, another round of laughter at my expense. But today felt different. My silence wasn't submission. It was the calm before a storm I had carefully planned. Noah kept going, rambling about a new real estate deal he'd closed last week. Some people just don't get how to build wealth, he said, giving me a pointed look. It's about discipline, strategy, real skills. He leaned back in his chair, stretching like a lion after a big meal, completely sure of his dominance. He turned to Harper, laughing. I hope you're taking notes from me and not from our dear sister here, unless you want to end up living off ramen noodles. I glanced at Harper, whose jaw was set tight. She looked like she was about to explode, but I shook my head slightly. I didn't need her to defend me this time. My plan was already in motion, and she knew it. Dad stepped over with a plate of burgers, wiping his hands on a towel. Alina, maybe you should talk to your brother more, he said, not unkindly, but with that same patronizing tone he always used when he wanted to remind me of my supposed shortcomings. He could teach you a thing or two about saving. You're still living in that little apartment, right? You don't want to be stuck in that forever. He laughed again, turning back to the grill before I could answer. Their words stung, not because they were new, but because they were so familiar. Each comment was like an old bruise being pressed again and again. Over the years, I had built armor for these moments, smiling, nodding, deflecting. But today, the armor wasn't to protect me. It was to hold in the secret I was about to unleash. As Noah kept boasting, Harper finally snapped. She slammed her drink down and stood up so fast her chair nearly fell over. You know what? You don't know everything, Noah. You don't even know half of it. Her voice was shaking with anger, her eyes blazing. Everyone went quiet, turning to stare at her. Noah looked stunned, blinking rapidly, not used to anyone challenging him so directly. Mom looked worried, her hands wringing the dish towel. Harper, honey, let's not do this today, she pleaded. But Harper ignored her, her eyes locked on me, waiting for my signal. I stood there for a moment, feeling the sun on my face and the adrenaline rushing through my veins. I set my glass down carefully, each movement deliberate. I looked at Noah, then at Dad, and finally at Mom. In that pause, the entire yard seemed to hold its breath. I think it's time I show you all something, I said, my voice steady and even. Noah laughed nervously, trying to salvage his control. Oh yeah? You gonna pull out a budget binder or something? Give us a coupon seminar? The laugh died in his throat when he saw that I wasn't laughing with him. I turned to Harper and gave her a small nod. She immediately dashed into the house to grab the folder I had hidden in my bag. She returned quickly, eyes wide with anticipation, and handed it to me with a slight tremble in her hands. As I took the folder and felt its weight in my hands, I knew the moment had finally come. The years of ridicule, the endless jokes, the countless times I questioned my own worth, all of it was about to flip in a single breath. And for the first time, I wasn't scared. I was ready. I held the folder in my hands, the thick weight of it pressing against my palms like a loaded secret. It was just paper, really, contracts, legal filings, bank receipts, but it felt like something far more powerful. It felt like every hour I had spent building my business, every risk I had taken, every quiet night I spent learning and planning, while they laughed and rolled their eyes. I looked at each of them one by one. My dad with his arms crossed, looking mildly confused but still expectant, like he assumed I was about to present some half-baked idea they could dismiss. My mom stood beside him, nervous and fidgety, her eyes darting between all of us, bracing for conflict. And Noah, the same smug grin glued to his face, leaning back with that unbearable air of casual superiority. He was already preparing his next joke, the punchline he was sure I was walking right into. I didn't give him the chance. I cleared my throat and opened the folder slowly. The breeze caught the top page and fluttered it, like it was making a dramatic entrance of its own. I held up the first document, property transfer papers, signed, sealed, official, and laid it flat on the patio table. This, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, is the deed to a home I just purchased, in full. No loan, no mortgage. Noah snorted. What, like a tiny house or something? One of those container units? He was smirking, but his voice had that slight edge of uncertainty now. He wasn't entirely sure what game I was playing. I ignored him and pulled out the next page. It's a 3-bedroom house in Brookstone Heights. Backyard, renovated kitchen, 2-car garage. Less than 10 minutes from here. I met my dad's eyes. You know that street you drive through sometimes and say, "One day we'll move over there?" He nodded slowly, his face unreadable. My mom gasped, a hand flying to her chest. "Alina," she started, but I wasn't finished. I laid down the next page, an addendum to the contract, clearly typed, notarized, signed by me and my attorney. The house is already furnished, paid in full, move-in ready. I took a breath and looked directly at Noah as I continued. And here's the only condition. The house is for you all. Mom, Dad, you'll never have to pay $1 of rent. But if I hear the words "broke one," or hear another joke about how I can't handle money, or if any of you speak about me like I don't know what I'm doing, this clause gives me the legal right to remove you from the property. For a second, all I could hear was the wind moving through the trees and the faint hum of the old stereo inside the house. Noah's jaw actually dropped. My dad's mouth opened, but no words came out. My mom started crying, quietly, like she didn't want to interrupt, but the tears were real and full of shock. I felt my pulse pounding, but I didn't back down. I didn't do this to show off. I did it because I love you, but I won't keep loving you in silence while you tear me down. I've built something good, and I won't let the people closest to me be the ones who diminish it anymore. Harper clapped, a single sharp burst of sound that broke the silence. "You're amazing," she said, beaming. "Absolutely amazing." Noah stood slowly, like he wasn't sure how to use his legs. "You're serious?" he asked, his voice small, nothing like the booming bravado from earlier. "You bought them a house? You did all this?" "Yes," I said simply. "And I could have done it a year ago, but I waited until I was sure, until I didn't need your approval. I don't anymore." My dad walked over to the papers and stared at them for a long time. Then he looked at me. "You bought this for us?" His voice was quiet, nearly cracking. "Yes, but I'm not giving away kindness that gets met with ridicule anymore." That was the turning point. Not just in the conversation, but in how they saw me. I wasn't the joke at the table anymore. I was the one who had kept her head down, made sacrifices, and done what none of them thought I could. They had called me the broke one for so long, they never realized I was quietly building a legacy. And now, I was done hiding it. The yard felt frozen in that moment, like the air itself had turned heavy and thick around us. My dad kept his eyes fixed on the deed, his fingers hovering over the edge of the paper, as if he was afraid touching it would make it vanish. My mom pressed her trembling hands to her mouth, her eyes wide and brimming with tears she couldn't stop. For the first time in my life, I saw Noah speechless. His mouth opened slightly, then closed again, like he was trying to find some sarcastic remark to throw back at me, but his brain couldn't catch up to what his eyes were seeing. Harper stood beside me, absolutely glowing. I could feel her vibrating with excitement and pride, like she might actually explode from holding it all in. She didn't try to hide her grin. She just kept looking back and forth between me and the stunned faces around the yard. Dad finally found his voice. It came out rough, low, almost like a growl. You did this? You bought this house for us? By yourself?" He looked at me like he didn't recognize the daughter standing in front of him. the daughter he had labeled careless and incapable for most of her adult life. "Yes," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I did this. I worked for it. I saved. I invested. I built my business. While you were all laughing at me, I was learning how to make money work for me. I wanted you to have this house, because I know it's always been your dream to move into that neighborhood. But I wasn't going to give it to you without making sure I wouldn't be mocked in my own story anymore." My dad stepped closer, still staring at me, his expression shifting between disbelief and something like shame. "I don't know what to say," he muttered, his voice so low it almost got lost in the breeze. "You don't have to say anything," I told him, meeting his eyes without flinching. "I just needed you to understand that I'm not the same girl you thought I was. I'm not the broke one. I'm not helpless, and I won't let any of you make me feel small again." My mom finally let out a sob, her shoulders shaking as she reached for me. She wrapped her arms around me so tight I felt her whole body trembling. "I'm sorry," she kept whispering over and over into my hair. "I'm so sorry. We didn't know. We should have believed in you. I should have stopped them." I held her tightly, feeling a bittersweet warmth spread through my chest. I knew she meant it. I felt her regret, her relief, and her pride all at once, pulsing between us in that embrace. When she finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and wet, but her eyes were clear in a way I hadn't seen before. She looked at me like she was seeing me, really seeing me, for the first time. Noah sat back down hard on the patio chair, his elbows on his knees, staring at the ground. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. After a long stretch of silence, he finally looked up at me, his voice hoarse and uncertain. "I don't know what to say," he admitted, shaking his head. "I've been awful to you. I thought you were just drifting through life. I didn't know you had it in you." "You never asked," I replied, my voice calm. "You were so busy performing, so busy making sure you looked like the big success. You never even thought to see what I was really building." His eyes dropped again, and he just nodded. He looked like a man who had lost a fight he didn't know he was in. And for once, there were no jokes, no smirks, no casual jabs, just the sound of reality landing, heavy and inescapable. My dad rubbed the back of his neck, then finally reached out and rested a hand on my shoulder. It was awkward and hesitant, but it was something. "I don't think I ever really listened," he admitted, his voice thick. "I'm proud of you. You're stronger than I gave you credit for." Harper let out a loud, triumphant laugh and clapped her hands. "Finally!" she shouted, nearly bouncing on her toes. "I've been saying this forever." She turned and hugged me from the side, her energy spilling everywhere, and I couldn't help but laugh through the tightness in my chest. In that moment, the air shifted. The years of ridicule, the labels they had slapped on me, the dinner table jokes, they all fell away. For the first time, I felt free, not because they finally understood me, but because I had chosen to show them who I really was on my own terms. In one afternoon, I flipped the power dynamic completely, not with revenge or shouting, but with proof, undeniable, permanent, life-changing proof. In the days after that afternoon, everything felt different, like I had finally cracked open a sealed room in our family and let in the light. My parents called me almost every morning, sometimes just to ask simple questions about the house or to share little updates, but every conversation carried a softness, a respect I had never felt before. My dad, who used to greet me with dismissive nods or tired jokes about money, started asking for my opinion on his retirement account, and even showed me the dusty folder where he kept his old savings plans. The first time he called and actually listened, really listened, I sat in my kitchen after hanging up and just let the tears fall, feeling decades of tension begin to unwind. My mom started visiting me more often, showing up with bags of groceries or leftover dinners. She no longer used that cautious, tiptoeing tone she once did when talking about my work. Instead, she asked thoughtful questions, genuinely curious about the clients I was helping and the companies I was advising. One afternoon, while we sat in my small living room with mugs of tea, She reached across and squeezed my hand. "You always saw things differently," she said, her voice trembling. "I should have been the first to believe in you. I'm so sorry." There was no performance in her face, no sense of trying to keep the family image intact, just honesty and love, raw and unguarded. Noah stayed quiet for a while, clearly trying to process his own guilt and embarrassment. He still showed up at family dinners, but the loud bragging was gone. He listened more than he spoke, and whenever he looked at me, there was a humility in his eyes I never thought I'd see. A few weeks later, he finally pulled me aside while everyone else was in the kitchen. He shifted awkwardly, shoving his hands into his pockets, and stared at the floor. "I was a jerk," he blurted out. "I thought I knew everything, but I didn't even try to understand you. I'm sorry." His voice cracked at the end, and when he finally looked up, his eyes were wet. I hugged him before he could overthink it, and for the first time, I felt like we were actually brother and sister, equals instead of competitors in some imaginary game he had created. Harper, my bright, unstoppable sister, became my closest ally. She started helping me furnish the new house, picking out paint colors with infectious enthusiasm, and researching furniture deals like it was her personal mission. Every room we planned together felt like reclaiming a little piece of our shared childhood, like rewriting all the old stories where I was the mess-up and she was the quiet bystander. We spent hours laughing over old family photos, making new memories that felt joyful and unburdened. One night, while we painted an accent wall in what would become Mom's reading room, Harper paused, looked at me seriously, and said, "You didn't just buy them a house. You changed everything. You taught them what real strength looks like." Her words landed deep inside me, a validation I hadn't even realized I was waiting for. Watching my family adjust to the new house was like watching a slow thaw after a long, bitter winter. The old judgments didn't vanish overnight, but they softened. My dad started working on small gardening projects in the backyard, humming under his breath without that old edge of tension. My mom sat by the big front window every morning, sipping her tea and reading, finally enjoying a little quiet peace she had always sacrificed for the rest of us. Seeing them there, in a home I had chosen for them, made every sacrifice, every late night, and every tear-soaked rejection letter worth it. Looking back, I realized this wasn't just about money, or proving I could handle it. It was about breaking the story they had always told about me. It was about stepping out of the box they had kept me in, and showing them I had already built a life beyond anything they could imagine. I had turned every insult into motivation, every dismissal into fuel. I had taught myself to value my own voice above theirs, to build a foundation strong enough to stand even when they doubted me. If I could tell anyone watching my story one thing, it would be this: you do not need permission to become who you know you can be. You don't need their applause or understanding. You just need your own belief, your own vision, and the willingness to keep going when no one else can see your path. And sometimes, the sweetest justice isn't revenge or shouting back. It's standing in front of them one day, unbreakable, undeniable, and finally free. As I watched my family laugh together in their new backyard, the sun setting behind the house I had given them, I felt a peace settle over me that I had never known. I didn't need them to call me anything anymore. Not broke, not successful, not anything at all, because I knew who I was, and for the first time, that was more than enough.